but I got this. All right. All right. All right. Hello, I am Robert Dent. This is The Conduit. Welcome you to our broadcast of Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces with Mark Boatwright-Frost. How you doing today, Mark?
Doing real well. How about yourself? How are you feeling?
Uh, I'm feeling pretty good, actually. I'm doing better. I mean, it's been a rough go, but we're doing what we can to be better. So, what's your topic today, man?
Well, we're going to be doing a question today because we continue. I don't know if you saw the podcast from last week where we talked about why are resilient communities necessary? And this week is a continuation. We have 5 core questions, and today's question is, what's wrong with the cultural framework we have today?
Okay.
So it's a build on to last week. We talked last week about water crisis, about how water and food are linked, how dominoes cascade, and we're looking at an unfriendly future. And quite honestly, we're seeing a growing epidemic, for lack of a better word. Sorry, Rob. About our youth feeling like they're being left behind, like there's no opportunity for them, a feeling of hopelessness. There are a lot of thoughts about why people aren't returning to work, why people aren't even starting work. They're looking for different ways of making a living, of surviving, of thriving. And this is, I think, a huge signpost on the side of the freeway that something's wrong. And I think all of us know in our heart that something is wrong. And I try not to harp on the hopelessness and or fear or all of the things that are wrong, because quite honestly, we know. Even if you don't know, you know. Uh, Good 50% of the country are living one paycheck away from homelessness. 50%. If you think about that, that's pretty scary. Um, so what we want to talk about is why the culture is broken. I mean, what is broken about our framework? Why shouldn't it work? Is it working for you, Rob? Honestly?
No, no, it's really not working for me. I mean, I see what you're talking about with the youth and being disenfranchised with most of this. Okay, I mean, it is to people not going back to work and not doing things. The system isn't working. I mean, even we see it on our level with trying to find volunteers or trying to find people to do construction work. Nobody wants to. There's no motivation.
No, and there's a lot of fear. I mean, there used to be a joke, but just 3 or 4 years ago, the comedy routines were talking about all the kids returning to home and becoming, latchkey children and living with their parents. We
Yeah,
thought this was funny, that they're playing video games and we're making fun of them. Is that
yeah.
really the case? Are they really just going home to play video games and not have any interest in work, or is it just that there's nothing out there for them, and all of the, for lack of a better term, the lies they have been told about the path to their future have become clear, and they have no idea what to do next because nothing they have been told by people who know is working or has worked for them.
No, and you're correct. I mean, I see this even with me and my wife have talked about this with my son. As you know, I have a 21-year-old son, and
Yeah.
Brandon. I mean, it is looking at the world that's out there, and he goes out and he works and he tries to be motivated to do things, but he's got no everything that we learned or know. The world is a different place now.
It
It it,
is.
I mean, and it's like we were talking. You can look at the rental problems out there. I mean, the cost of rentals, not just the fact that there's nothing to rent. but the cost of rentals. I mean, you go to get a 2 bedroom place that's half decent, you're looking at $1,800-$1,900 a month. Okay,
Yep.
how can you feasibly look at somebody's that's in there, 19, 20, 24, 25, and go, well, you've
Making
got to,
$15 an hour.
yeah, making $13 to $15 an hour, and go, hey, you have to pay $1,900 a month for rent, and that's just your rent. That's not any kind of insurance. That's not any kind of utilities. That's not any gas. That's not a car payment. That's nothing.
You
What
remember when
about
they said that rent is supposed to be a quarter of your income?
now? It's all of your income.
Yeah, and then some. And you have to live with like six other people in a communal situation to survive, just to have a roof over your head, to have food on the table.
Yes.
My daughter and her fiance live in a cracker box here in Bremerton that literally you turn around, you're turning around into each other, and they're paying 1,100, 1,200 a month
Oh yeah.
for it.
Yeah. It's. I mean, and it's not going to get any better out there. And I know, our situation in this area is unique to some other areas in the country. I mean, because we are dealing with the military, which also adds to the market that you're trying to, but still, it's, and how do you reasonably ask them to go out and face this? Because I mean, we face this. My son still lives at home with us because it is easier for you to live at home with me and give me some portion of the rent than to try and go out there and fall on your face and end up one of the statistics out there because you don't have anywhere to be.
Absolutely. And it's a dire picture. And I want to start this off by saying we'll talk about what's wrong with culture, but the overall message of here is that we can reprogram it and make it better.
Yes.
So let's talk about why the culture is broken. And we have to start about 15,000 years ago. If you read Daniel Quinn's Ishmael, you started about 15,000 years ago. We were in the Fertile Crescent. Up until that point, we were predominantly the human species was hunter gatherers. We discovered agriculture. We decided to start doing more of a fixed agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. We started thriving. And then somebody decided that, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if we locked up the food? Just for security, of course. We locked up the food and then we can dole it out to everybody and then we'll be more secure. Seems like a simple argument to make. And then
Yeah.
suddenly, now you have a hierarchy and people in control of the resources you need to live. Then suddenly we had a very quick advancement into city states by human standards of 3 million years, a very quick advancement into city states. And then we started taking over cultures around us because we had the food and the ability to have resources. And we started, not to show my nerd flag too high, but we started being like the Borg and assimilating other cultures and other groups around us until 15,000 years later, we've pretty much assimilated all other cultures in one way or the other. So when I say a toxic culture or the culture we have now, the cultural framework we have now, it's a cultural framework by which the world lives. And now a whole bunch of people are jumping up and down in their chairs. Probably if they were on here actually looking to learn something new, they would be commenting. But we have Asian culture and Russian culture and African culture, and I would say yeah, and they're all bound by the same rules. There are variations within the framework, but the framework pretty much holds true for all of us. And
Yes.
that's, I mean, we have become a culture of conquest, a culture of absorption, a culture of ownership. And that's a very important word because we think we own this planet. We think we own the land we live on. And, to quote Crocodile Dundee, and because I find that amusing, in one of his movies, I think it was Crocodile Dundee 2, he said, the Aborigines think this way. So see that rock over there? That rock's been there for 6, 10, 12 million years. How do you own it? It'll be here 6, 10, 12 million years after you're gone. How do you own it?
Yeah.
And think about it. That's how we used to think prior to the time that we started developing cities. We have a toxic culture that was developed and has been in development for 15,000 years. It is accelerating. We can see how fast it's accelerating now. And here's the bottom line. So, what we talked about last week, we have one planet, we have fixed resources. A cultural structure that requires ever increasing use of resources is going to fail and fail catastrophically for the people living within it. And we're seeing that now. At the far end, our children are seeing a future that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And for 15,000 years, in an accelerating and more efficient manner, we have been teaching them that if you follow this path of this cultural framework, you will succeed and thrive. Except we aren't anymore because we have fixed resources and we've hit the end of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have people. I don't know if you've seen it yet. We just put out our year-end update about what's going on, and it's a 24-page document that talks about how we look at the world, the problems we see, the solutions we see, how we're addressing it, and how everybody has a piece to the puzzle that they need to bring to the table so that we can make a picture of the future that is more human-centric and not more resource use centric. So in this process, I've sent it out. The way we work, the way I work, is that I create a document, I write the information, then I send it out to a whole bunch of people, people with widely varying points of view, and then I have them comment on it, and then I improve the document as I need to. And I've gotten a lot of pushback on it. Like, a lot of people don't want to talk about the problems. And
No.
I strongly believe that if you to solve a problem, first you got to know you got one.
Yeah. Well, and most people would rather bury their head in the sand and ignore the problem. I mean, because if we just go along to get along and do what we're doing, everything will be all right. And in
You know,
actuality, not.
I have a meme on Facebook that I put up several years ago, and it actually came up in one of those idiotic Facebook reminders that you posted this 5 years ago. You should post it again. It's a picture of a guy with his butt in the air and his head in the sand. I said, that's a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
So now that you've got that picture in your head, we some of the other comments I've got is, you don't talk enough about greed. You don't talk enough about the oligarchy. You don't talk enough about this. And I said, really, it's immaterial.
Mm-hmm.
The oligarchs are going to do what the oligarchs are going to do. We have to do something different, and that's
Yes.
our choice. So talking about them just focuses us on the wrong problem or the wrong solution. We can rally and scream and protest and knock our heads against the wall, but that's not going to reprogram culture. What we have to do is come together and talk. So
Yes.
what's wrong with our culture? Let's see. Oh, it tells us that we shouldn't come together and talk. Did you say that's a fair statement?
No, that's a fair statement. Yeah.
We should all hate each other. We should worry about a person's skin color, their gender, their label. I had an interesting thought this morning. I was walking my dogs, and where I live, we have a lot of different characters and people. And I looked at the van of somebody who lives here, and I thought, oh, that person is X. And I said, wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa! I'm labeling this person. I in my head have labeled this person. Is that I don't know this person. I don't know anything about them. I don't know anything about who they are, what their factors are, what have caused them to act in some erratic manners that I've noticed. Don't know anything. Yet I, in my head and my heart, have labeled this person. Then I started thinking about labels in general, and the fact that we have a friend, somebody we know, and actually my daughter went through this too, that they say, I want to be identified by the pronoun they.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good with that. And I was thinking about this while I was walking my dogs, and I was thinking about the labels, and I kind of went, huh. I get that there's a healthy thing about looking at gender pronouns. and understanding that. But isn't that something you should be doing for you
Yeah.
instead of enforcing somebody else? And I said, I understand that calling them by their obvious physical gender may be inappropriate, but I don't tend to think of people that way anyhow. I think of people as human beings, and that's all the label I need. They can be any number of things under being a human being, and I don't care. It's not my business. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care who you pray to. I don't care about any of those things. That's none of my business. My business is taking care of my own growth and trying to help my fellow man be a better human being. Those are my two jobs. And labeling people seems to put us into smaller and smaller boxes and keeps us from talking to each other even more. So maybe part of what our culture does is it helps us label everything, because humans need labels to understand things. Do we? Do we really? Do we really need labels to define people and things for us?
No, not really.
So isn't that an endemic of why this culture is and to answer the question we're talking about today? What's wrong with our culture now? It's all about keeping us apart. It's all about keeping us at odds with each other. And that goes back to something Aesop said in like the 6th century BC. United we stand, and divided we fall.
Yes.
We are a culture of assimilation. We are a culture of conquest. We are a culture of acquisition. So that seems to be that if you're looking at united we stand and divided we fall, that works to the benefit of our acquisitive culture, but not as as human beings. So now that we've depressed the hell out of everybody, let's talk about what we can do to fix it. First of all, no one's going to fix it for us. And okay, here's a label. I'm raising my hand. I don't know. I'll get it in front of the camera so you can see me raising my hand. I personally think that anyone who believes any political party or politician is going to fix something from us is a little bit crazy and has no memory.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of really good, wonderful, strong, good-hearted people that believe that. Believe that with everything they do. They put their heart and soul into a political solution to a cultural problem. We got to stop doing that. We got to sit down together and we got to put the politics aside. We got to put the religion aside. We've got to put the skin color, the gender, the age, all of the isms and labels we have. We need to just sit down. And you know how we do this? By determining what's important to us as human beings. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about. The homeless problem, food security and having food on the table, and things you deal with on a daily basis and working at G2. These are the things we can sit down and talk about and just get to a point where we can hear each other, where we can listen to each other, where we can vent our feelings and the other person doesn't judge, just listens to it, and then sit down and say, so how do we fix it? Yeah. How do we make those the important things? How do we make those the things that we care about and work on? And not try and take on the whole world. That's the other thing that we trip on ourselves for. Whenever we do something, there's two mistakes we make right off the bat. First mistake is we try and do it in a sitcom time frame. We think everything should be solved tomorrow. The second thing we do is that we try and solve big problems, and it overwhelms us.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is let's solve the problem in our neighborhood by getting to know our neighbors. You want to reprogram the planet? You want to reprogram our toxic culture? Get to know your neighbor. On a very small scale, 1-to-1, I challenge everybody to go out and meet your neighbors. Even the one you don't like. the curmudgeon, because there's something about them that you don't know. Find it out. Talk to them. Figure out what the deal is. In your own neighborhood, that's all we're asking. In your own neighborhood, then learn the important things about them and find out what's important to them, and try and do it without getting into religion, without judging. Just talk to them. And if you need help with that, we have workshops to teach you how to do it. And you've sat through a bunch of the workshops. You see the stuff we get into. We're talking about how not to judge, how
Yeah.
to step back from everything else, how to listen to somebody until they can speak and speak their truth and feel like they've been heard. Because a lot of times the stuff you hear from people is because they're feeling like they have no voice, and they have no one hearing them. So you have to go through the process of that. We reprogram culture by reprogramming ourselves, by becoming human, by focusing and embracing our humanity, by focusing on who we are as human beings. And that's the simple, I mean, it's no harder than that. But it's the hardest thing on the planet, because you talk to people about it and they go, oh, yeah, and then they start moving away from it and changing the subject and trying to say, well, can't we just go out and protest it? No, you have to do this by connecting with other people, by talking, by becoming human, by building relationships, by breaking bread together. Oh my God, it's a pre-biblical concept.
Yeah.
Breaking bread together, building trust. Yeah, you can tell how broken our culture is by how hard it is to embrace our humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Argue that.
So kick my teeth in here, Rob. I mean, I feel like I'm lecturing now.
Oh no, it's all right. I mean, I I agree that change takes time. We both know this. Said, and the only way you're going to make reasonable change is to take the time, invest the time in the people. Because if you're looking to Big Brother, which I'm calling the government, to make those changes for you, that is never going to happen. They will do whatever benefits them best, and who cares about you? Okay. Um, so to make reasonable, meaningful change, it has to start at a community level. It has to start with your neighbors. It has to start with learning how each other get along, or what I can do for you and what you can do for me, how we can help each other out to make this a better place. And so it really does. I mean, I don't, I believe that wholeheartedly. It is, you know it's what we do. I mean, what you do and what we do. I mean, we're not so far apart on what both our organizations do here. I
Yeah,
mean, so it is. But to make those changes, it it really has to be. It is one person at a time, and to build it out from there. You know.
yeah. We're Marwan and I have been talking about ways that we can raise some money so we can put together a sponsorship fund. And so when we have a neighborhood that wants to get together, we can sponsor a block party
Yeah.
and come in and barbecue and serve people food, and maybe talk to some of the local bands around and see if we can get a couple bands to come play, and make it a thing. Make it a thing so that when we get a neighborhood together, let's get them together to break bread. Let's have a party. Let's make it fun.
And this is all things. I mean, that if you go back and you look, and we're not so far apart in age, Mark. This is stuff that happened when we were younger. I mean,
Yep.
there were block parties, there were neighborhoods. You had the barbecue. People knew their neighbors. They talked to each other. You
Yep.
don't do that now. It
Nope.
just doesn't. You know, I want to be in my 3 foot, my 3x3 area, and that's it. Keep me in my box, in my world, and I don't need to talk to you. And I'll just go along to get along, and maybe the government will make it better. Maybe it'll just change. You have to get outside that 3 foot, that 3 foot box. Get out of that area, and just connect.
Yep. And we're scared, but we're scared.
Yes.
And I will tell you, I do this work every day. I've been doing this work in one form or another for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared every day, but I talk to people every day. They're
Every day.
scared to talk about what I talk about, but they connect, and we're growing every day. We have more people joining on board every day. They don't
Yep.
completely get what we're doing because it's outside of their zone, but when they
Yeah.
start embracing it and understanding it, it's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah. It is. It is phenomenal.
And you work on, and to be honest, you guys work on the, oh,
Excuse me.
oh
Sorry.
no, no. You guys work on the other side of the equation for me. I'm trying to get everybody together talking, and you guys are trying to just keep people alive who have gotten the worst of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. I
The
saw.
regular host just entered the frame. So,
It's okay.
so
So
could you?
anyway, but you guys work on the people you work on keeping the people alive who are broken, who have been
Yeah.
broken by the system, and it's a growing number. You guys are seeing exponential growth over the last 5 years of the people you're serving. More food, more trips, more help.
Yes, and I would say it's grown even exponentially since we, since even since the beginning of the pandemic, it's gotten more and more and more and more. You
And it's
know,
a trend that's not going to change unless we change it.
yeah,
Fair statement that we can't depend on corporations to be responsible and help fix things.
yeah. No, corporations are in it for corporations. They're in it to make money. There's
Yeah.
capital in there.
I don't know if you saw the post that I put up that companies are buying out water rights from cities who are financially hurting so that they can profit on the water.
No, but I'm not shocked. I mean, I have not seen the post, but like I said, I am not shocked at all at you know, that they're
The
doing something like.
parasitical nature of the practice.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, let's come back to you look at the pandemic. Prospered in the pandemic. Well, I would go Amazon's prospered in the pandemic. You know, we're at
Yep.
home. You can't get out to the world, but I deliver everything to you. So I'm going to make it that, you know, it's helping you. But really, whose pockets are getting lined here? Not ours, you
Yeah.
know?
And they pay what, $15 an hour? And
Uh,
their conditions, from everything that I've read, and I don't know, I've never been into an Amazon warehouse in my life, so I can't personally speak to this, but everything I've read says it's not a really safe place to work.
uh, from what I've read, I've never personally been in there myself either, but I do know they start at 15 and they've been advertising anywhere from 15 to 22, but depending on the position you're in. But still, even at $22 an hour, we come back to what we were speaking at the beginning of this, Mark. I mean, at $22 an hour, can you reasonably pay $1,900 a month plus, say, a $600 car payment plus all your utilities on your own?
No, as a matter of fact, I wanted to say this early on, and it slipped my mind. And I wish I could quote which university said this, and there were three studies out about it. But in the last couple of years, a couple of studies have said that in order to pay for everything you need to pay for and live even a moderate life, you have to be making $48,000 a year.
Yeah,
That's
I would.
individually.
Well, and I would argue that you probably need to be making closer to between $60,000 and $70,000 a year if you want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
in the bigger cities.
yes. Hello, Mr. Cameron.
Hi.
So yeah, it's like rents being what they are, and I guess I could live someplace in West Virginia or Tennessee for a whole lot less,
Mhm.
but um, the opportunities are a whole lot less as well. Your ability to generate that kind of income are less.
Yes, and it is. I mean, just recently I was down in Texas, as you know, for my
Mhm.
father's memorial. And when I was down there checking like rent prices and stuff like that, the rent prices down there, I mean, they're charging, $1,100, $1,200 a month for the same thing we're charging 18 to 19 for.
Right.
But their income level of earning is not the same. They're not looking at,
No.
we need $15 minimum wage. They're getting $10 an hour down there,
Yeah.
and depending on the labor force you're using and depending where you're at. I was in the Houston area. There are undocumented laborers that they use down there, or there are regular laborers. So I mean, it is a whole different variation down there, I guess, of how it is. And it's, you know,
Which brings up an interesting question. And I've known this in the past, that Texas benefits greatly from undocumented labor. So what would that wall do for them? It would actually hurt a lot of the businesses in Texas.
yeah.
Oh, he's using the joystick.
I haven't shown him how to use this yet.
Yeah. So, yeah, it would, you would think it would hurt the labor base in Texas, and to some extent, I would say it does. It is other things that I had noticed down there, like me and Marwan had talked about when I got back. Here, you see, like if you go over to Seattle, you see the homeless problem. Okay, I mean, you see them in the tents and the things and under the viaducts, or even here in Bremerton itself, you
Mhm.
can physically see it. And I'm aware of what the signs are. This is some of the things that we address and we do. And so I go down there and I can't see them anywhere. So I get in a conversation with my mom about this. And she says, well, they put them all in all the parks, and then they take them from the parks and they're paying to put them in a hotel so that you don't see the homeless problem down there. They hide the problem, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's just, it's different than
Yeah, there seems to be strategies about everything but fixing it.
Yes.
Facts.
So, I Marwan, did you get a chance to read the last version of the update?
No, I did not.
Okay, because I talk about capitalism in there, and I talk about let's start off with everyone's point of view that capitalism and democracy are linked at the hip. They cannot be torn apart. They are the same system. And people believe this. And I've had people get in my face about it whenever I talk about capitalism and examine the downfall of capitalism. And the truth is, democracy is a form of government. You can have any economic model attached to democracy. And there are many examples of other models all around the world. It's only in the United States, well, mostly in the United States, we believe that we have to be capitalist to be democratic. And yet, all around the world, there are variations of socialism. We are the only industrialized country in the entire world that does not have universal health care. And what would have universal health care done to change the picture of how we dealt with this pandemic? Marwan, how long did you sit in the office waiting for a COVID test today?
Not only was I in there for a few hours, but they didn't even want to give me the test. So they told me, did I have any symptoms? Even though I've been exposed to someone who had a positive test. If I didn't have any symptoms, they said to go home. Secondarily, I wanted to ask, because I'm really confused as how the whole thing works. Okay, so I've been exposed to someone who has a positive test. So when does my 5 days start? From the time that they were with me and they found out they got the test done, or from the time that it was my first day with them? So it's just really confusing. So I was told they took their test Thursday, so their 5 days ends today. We found out Monday. So even if I get a positive test today, I was exposed to them last Thursday. I could have gotten it any time in those 5 days, but my time won't start until I get my positive test, until my test date. So it's like, huh? So when does this when does it start? And it's like this long, never-ending circle of, okay, well, Rob and Stephanie and the rest of the crew had COVID. Now they're at the end of their 5 days. Now I'm here. Like, I'm here now, right? So do I give it back to Rob? Or does he have enough antibodies that he can't get it right now, right? Or is it just going to be a circular thing,
Yeah.
It's an awful game of catch, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was watching someone that I respect today in a podcast, and they were saying that there are already people that are catching Omicron for the second time, and this thing's only been around since November. I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty crazy. So what are we going to do? And then how does that impact those of us that aren't on salary, may have to send our kids to school? Of course, maybe they're playing in sports and the cost of those sports and things of that nature. Do I go to work? Do I stay home? The moratorium of eviction is off now. So if I don't go to work, I can't pay my rent. I don't want to get evicted, but then I might expose others. Hell, I might get exposed. I don't have it, but other people are in that scenario. So I'm going to work. They're in that scenario, and now I get COVID from them. So it's like, it is such a mess right now. It's like, exactly how are people that don't have the resources gonna cope with this and really not go under? I think this is going to be so much worse.
You mean like 60% of the 300 and some odd million people that we have in the United States?
Yeah. I think this is going to be so much worse than the housing crisis of 08. And we haven't even seen the beginning yet. I mean, deaths aside, which is horrible. We haven't seen
the economic impact.
Yeah.
And so let's imagine for a minute. I mean, thank you guys for making yet one more point about why our culture is what's wrong with our culture today, that we have to change it, why we have to reprogram it. But let's imagine for a minute. Let's visualize a future. What might this have looked like if we had a universal healthcare system in the country, and instead of a political drive to get vaccinated and put out information, we had a scientific medical push, and that somebody who actually knew something about logistics was arranging for our healthcare system to make sure that we had vaccinations and that we had information and that we had ability to get tested when we needed to get tested. What might that look like?
It would look far more efficient. It's just like, with the Biden White House mailing out, the COVID test per household. That's great, but that should have already been done. And a few weeks prior to that, they were giving out 10,000 home test kits in a city of 8 million. And it's like, what? That does nothing.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. But
it's politically, visually, it is politically and visually appealing to people who don't ask questions, which is,
well, most people.
Well, here's the thing, and the infrastructure is there. You sent out, under the Trump administration, they sent out stimulus checks, right, to almost everyone. Bam, it's already there. Pop them in the mail. Make sure that people have the home test and they can take the test. They could have done that 6 months ago. Again, this leading from behind.
Anyway, here's the thing, and I will defend the government a very little bit right here.
Let me go ahead and hit the record scratch.
Because Mark's defending the government, so I don't know, man.
Yeah, for a little bit. The money went out through the IRS, who actually have the infrastructure and the ability to do that in place. This is a medical tool, so it goes through a different department who isn't set up to do that and doesn't have those pieces in place. So if we'd have given it to the IRS to do, we'd have already had them. But the government has to go through the system that they go through.
But Mark, doesn't that kind of go to your overall point of the conversation today of us working together?
Yep.
Those are two different departments of the government that don't talk to each other and don't have the synergies. And the whole thing about resiliency is coming together and finding out how to leverage our knowledge, skills, and abilities to get the job done in the most effective and efficient way.
Okay, I'm going to take a left turn here to answer that.
Oh, no.
Going back to the question I ask everybody, what does a constitutional democracy look like without a political element?
Whew.
We've talked about this before. We
Yeah.
talk about the fact that we have professional politicians, and their impulses are not always um, safe, well thought out. And our government, the bureaucratic aspect of our government, functions in these little silos and separately, specifically to keep change from happening. And it's quite efficient for keeping change from happening. So the worst impulses of the political world don't have an opportunity to affect us until things have had time to change and to address some of the worst of the impulses. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It keeps us safe. On the other hand, when we need to change, and we need to change quickly because, oh, we might be extinct in 50 years, it works against us. Now, you're right. It would be good if they talked to each other and they were efficient. But in order to do that and be secure as human beings on this planet and in the United States, we would need to remove a lot of the political element and have some filters for the worst impulses of the political side.
You know, and I agree with what you're saying there, because I think about, you know, what's happening in the housing market where they are allowing, you know, foreign entities to buy up real estate and land, how they are privatizing a lot of these, I don't even know what to call these organizations, are buying up mass housing
I
developments.
call them parasites.
Yeah, and then they just up the rent, and it's like, okay, well, we have a housing crisis here. We have our own pandemic in regards to in regards to homelessness and affordable housing.
Mhm.
And what you're going to do is allow capitalists to go ahead and buy everything up and just continue to raise the prices and just drive this thing when you know that it's the total opposite of fixing the problem. And it's like they're not stupid. These aren't stupid people. So I always ask, you know, how much money is enough money? Like, how much do you need to have? I guess you need to be able to make your own rockets and satellites and send them up into orbit. Maybe that's enough. You know,
Okay, so you know, and strangely enough, I had this conversation this morning. Um, when we label people, as I was talking about labels and labels being dangerous, when we start thinking about capitalists, oligarchs, and greedy people and the one percenters, we label all these people and we put them in this box, and they are other, they are them. But are they? If we're going to be human centric, we have to look at everybody as human. And when you set all the conspiracy theories aside, maybe the answer that's left is the right answer. And the right answer is that our culture has so broken these people that they cannot literally see outside of themselves. They literally cannot see anything outside of their own filters. They do not see how what they do impacts the whole. And they will be as surprised, more surprised than anybody else when it all collapses. And collapse it must, because there are no resources left. The money is not cycling through the bottom of the pyramid. Matter of fact, the pyramid is now upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to collapse. This isn't economics, it's simple math. A healthy economy, a healthy capitalistic economy requires money cycling through the base. These people don't know economies. They aren't smart in that way. They're smart in how to manipulate their playbook and get money from people. They have the resources to manipulate a system that is failing. But the problem is, they're not fixing the system, and it will fail them as well as everybody else. There's no bunker, there's no island, there is no jet, there is no rocket ship that's going to save their ass. They're going to fail with the rest of us. So you have to think of them as humans that are flawed, that are broken.
How do you get them to see it? There was an article last week, and I don't know if it was the Wharton School of Business, but it was an Ivy League school. I don't know if you saw the article, and they gave like a business test to incoming students, and they thought the average income was $800,000 in the United States.
I heard about that.
And it's like if that's your thought process, I mean, the average is about 45,000. If that's your thought process, you can't even see that there's a problem. So for them, it's like, look, everyone's making almost $1 million a year, and if you're not doing that, then you're just being poor and lazy. They have we are living side by side with folks that are so in another stratosphere from other people or from each other. I don't even know how to get us to see things in the same wavelength.
Well, and I think that proves that the case I was making is that they're broken. They're so disconnected and so self-centric, but they're only 1% of the populace.
But they're making all the decisions. Like you said, the pyramid's upside down. 800,000 a year, the
they're
average.
making all the financial decisions, and they have to this point been making most of the cultural design decisions. And it's time that we come together and start addressing that from the bottom up. Okay, so you want to know how to affect them and get their attention?
Yes.
Stop buying. You know where I buy most of my clothes? I buy them at the Goodwill.
Yeah.
Because I can get reasonably good prices, and I can get Levi's that aren't costing me $50. So for me, I buy where it will do the most good. Now, granted, I have bought from Amazon.com. If you're trying to find a book, that's the only place you can go to get a reasonable selection of books, unfortunately. But I also go to Pages in Port Orchard. I go to other places to buy books. I do the best I can as a human being, but we can make choices to do things differently. But we come together and decide as a group to do it differently, it starts affecting change.
No, you're absolutely right. And we know that that's a very effective tool to use. I would say even more so than protesting is boycotting businesses and organizations. The dollar.
But if it's not even boycotting, it's just changing who you're buying from and what you're buying. Let's talk about planned obsolescence for a moment and resources. We have one planet, fixed resources. Yet manufacturers plan for you to rebuy or buy a new product every 3 years.
Didn't used to be that way. Stuff used to last.
We don't recycle. So we create landfills.
Mm-hmm.
And we play at actually making a better world because we mine methane from landfills occasionally. And we say we recycle, but we don't. And we don't hold the people who are creating the waste responsible for dealing with the waste. And by the way, that's a United States-centric thing. They actually do that in other countries. So if we come together and we decide that, this is not okay, the corporations really do have to pay for their own waste, you will see waste disappear. If you hold corporations responsible for their resource usage, you will see that change. But it's up to us to change the system. It benefits the corporations and the oligarchs. They aren't going to change something that's working for them. And they don't see the consequences. They will not see the consequences. Excuse me, they cannot see the consequences.
Mark, let me ask you a question. Do you see a future in which maybe the UN would come against the United States and say, hey, you guys are 5% of the population on this planet, but consuming 20% of this and 30% of that, and
no,
it's high time. You don't think so?
I don't think so. We're a superpower. Yeah. We have nuclear weapons. We are the strongest piece of NATO. To have them come against us, it would be political suicide to a lot of them.
Mm.
And do I think that's right? Absolutely not. Do I think it's the way it works? Yeah, I do.
But what would we do? If they cut us off. I mean, because right now we're outsourcing everything.
That's a top-down solution. And we can't do a top-down solution. We have to start with the neighborhoods, build to the communities, build to the regions, and create a grassroots movement so powerful that we stop buying from Walmart, that we stop buying cars from Ford, we stop buying, we change things. We forced a universal health care where we put the rules in place where doctors do not get pharmaceutical salespeople in their door buying them things and telling them how to practice medicine, that they actually have to know how to practice medicine and understand the human body.
Mhm.
We can do things like it is my understanding, and I need to talk to somebody who's a constitutional scholar about this, but it's my understanding from reading a fair amount of material on this that it does not require Congress to start driving a constitutional amendment. That can come from the state and from the people. Because essentially, if you get, let's see, Washington State's got what, 7 million people? If you get 1.5 million people in Washington State to come together and say that, let's say, corporations are not citizens, or no, something even easier, that we have a human rights amendment that was ratified, the Equal Rights Amendment was ratified by 34 out of the 38 necessary states. So let's say Washington State comes together and passes an amendment for the Constitution of the United States and ratifies it, saying that we want an equal rights amendment or a human rights amendment that covers everybody and makes the necessary changes to create equality across the board. And let's say then California does it and Oregon does it, and then it slowly moves to the states. By the time it gets to Congress, it's a fait accomplished. I don't know if that's how it works for certain, but the reading I have leads me to believe that it is a path. Would that not be a powerful tool to change things? But it starts from the ground up.
Yeah, I mean it's a daunting task in front of us for sure. And I'm thinking about the political divide. I'm listening to you both earlier, and like even we know where the red states stand on vaccines and mandatory masks and this and that, but then the left does something just as crazy, like in California, where they're trying to mandate that all the children are vaccinated, and or passing a law or passing a bill where minors at 12 can consent to getting a vaccine without their parents' permission or knowledge. These things are crazy to me.
Yeah, while I agree with vaccination and needing to get vaccinated, I'm very wary of that particular camel's nose in the tent.
That's crazy, Mark. So it's like both sides are just at such ends of the spectrum. We really have to do in the middle.
On the other hand, Gavin Newsom just signed into law a requirement that California businesses of 26 or more required to provide 80 days or 80 hours of sick leave to people who get COVID.
But how is that going to work? Because again, if we're already seeing reports of people getting COVID twice in a 3-month span, well, I got another 80 days off. Yep, I got another 80 days off. I mean, that's not
80 hours paid time off.
But still, 2
right.
weeks.
But it'll collapse. So you were talking about the inefficiencies of our healthcare system. I saw my doctor 2 weeks ago, and I needed to get a blood test done. Right, go up here to the old QFC and get it done. They have been closed since, maybe before I got my blood drawn. So I finally had the time to go out to Silverdale to get that done this morning. And it's like, hey, we've got shortages because of COVID. So go ahead, give them 80 hours out, right? We're just going to keep this closed. It's not going to work in that regard.
Well, and I would argue that, because how do you make, or not argue it, but I would say that with the 8 hours off and the 8 hours off and the 80 hours off, well, the way this thing's reinfecting people and reinfecting people, how do I maintain a business? How do we as G2 maintain volunteers? How do we as CMS G2 Construction maintain workers?
Mm-hmm.
In all of those cases, because if I'm giving people multiple times off at 2 weeks at a pop, I can't function.
Right.
Yeah, it's a mess. And the sad thing is, we've known this is coming for 30 to 40 years. We had 30 to 40 years planning. We didn't do a thing. Oh, wait, hold on. That's never happened before. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, we know that this little thing called Cascadia Rising is coming. We've known it for 2 decades, and Washington State is doing nothing.
And that's
We're talking
terrifying.
about a 9 magnitude quake followed by a tsunami that's going to take most of Western Washington out and put us down for months, and we're not planning for it. Leave a moment of silence here about that. We've known these things were coming. This is not a conspiracy theory, it's a known fact. The CDC has been warning about this, the World Health Organization has been warning about this for 30 to 40 years. And here we are. We had no logistical pieces in place for it. We know Cascadia Rising is coming. We know we're in the window of it. We are doing no logistical planning for it. When do we stop expecting somebody else to do it for us without us emphatically telling them what we expect of them and that we will hold them accountable for it? And the only way that's going to happen is to come together and stop letting them make decisions for us.
Right.
Yes.
And yes, it's a lot of work. And yes, it's scary. And yes, it's risky. But if we do it, it gets better every year. If we don't do it, it gets worse every year.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we're starting now. I mean, you started,
Yep.
before now, but we're starting now. At least more, I would say, more purposefully. We've been trying to build community, but not addressing so much those issues and galvanizing and getting people to move in one direction and educate them on the crises that are at hand, that are imminent, and what we can do as our own collective to be resilient through it.
Yeah. And to make our life better.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that we have food on the table, is that not an important thing? And Terry and I were talking this morning about how do you get people to show up? How do you get people to hear what you have to say and come and talk? And how do you get them to go out to their neighbors?
Food.
Yep.
So I think one of the things we need to do is get some funding aside to create a sponsorship for block parties.
Mm-hmm.
Find some musicians to play, make it a good time, and then get people to know about it. Record it and put it out.
Oh, maybe we can get Zamfir, master the pan flute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You went there, didn't you?
We got to put a silver lining around the cloud.
Yep.
Kind of a dark discussion. Necessary.
So I urge you guys to read the update. It is it's pretty comprehensive. I made some changes since the first one I sent you. I'll send you a new one, Marwan. Make sure you share it with Rob. I'm releasing it publicly this week. I'm updating the website as we speak. I am doing an outreach for Innovation for All, which is going to contact a whole bunch of really innovative people on YouTube who do engineering and cool stuff, asking them to look at solving real problems that people have around water, food, power. How can we solve the problems with innovation when our corporations aren't doing it because it doesn't make money for them? And how do we get it educated? How do we find influencers and educators to get people on board? And let's find the policy wonks that know how to get it through the system and get it approved so that it can get adopted.
Well, I think if you're going to release next week, when are you going to release that?
The update. It's going to go out public tomorrow.
Okay. I
And
think
the
it'd be,
website, it's already on our website, actually.
and I put that in the link. It might be great to jump into that next week a little bit if you want to kind of go in and talk about some of the pieces in there.
Yeah, we were actually already talking about a bunch of it. I mean, the questions came from there.
Good.
The 5 core questions, so we can go through and talk about that. But yeah, maybe next week, you guys read it and we'll do a discussion about what's in it.
I like it. Okay.
You can plan to grill me about what I wrote.
All right.
Okay. I will
So yeah.
Sounds pretty good to me. Do we have a question for next week?
The question for next week is, hold on, let me pull it up. Okay, it is that stuff. Next week's question is, why will this work?
Why will this work? Rob, will you type that into the chat? So the question for next week is, why will this work? And again, you can find that question on the Facebook page. And are you putting that on the website also, Mark?
Yeah, it is going to be up on the website. I will be updating the website on Saturday, and it will include all of the new stuff.
Nice.
You will find the summary for the update under the About Us section, and a drop down window in the About Us section.
All right. And hopefully, as Rob is typing that in there, I don't know if you've had a chance to reach out to some of the farmers markets and some of the growers here locally. But over the weekend, the kitchen has been painted to get ready for Cameron's kitchen and for you to come over and make your halibut.
Awesome.
Phenomenal. Kitchen looks phenomenal.
Yep. And I'm thinking that we'll do halibut with ginger marmalade, grilled and glazed with ginger marmalade. I will do some wild rice and maybe some broccoli vegetable thing.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That does sound good. And I will make some tame Crystal Light to go with that wild rice. All right, I'm going to give you the final Mark.
All right. I will see you next week. And until then, live a resilient life.
All right. Well, everyone, for Mark at Roseco, for Rob, I am Marwan. This is The Conduit. We will see you again next Wednesday at 12 p.m. All right. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.